his questions easier this way.
Are we ready for me to shut up and start working? No gavel? Do like a friend of mine did once, take the shoe off.
All right. Good evening, Budget Committee members. So, Chair Harrington, I'll let you call us to order, and then I will do a roll call. So,
welcome, everyone. And I'm going to turn it over to Karen Boland. Tonya. Or, Kevin, do you need to take roll call
yeah,
first?
I will take roll first. We will do this by budget committee. So, Karen Boland.
Here.
Joe Everton. Here. Jeff Safara.
Sarafa here.
Thank you for that. Sorry about that. Melissa Laird.
Here.
Sig Eulander.
Eulander here.
Okay, perfect. Enhanced Law Enforcement Urban Road Maintenance District, Dick Steinberg.
Steinbergy, I'm here.
Okay. Bruce Dickinson.
You're 0 for 3 so far.
I won't mess up yours.
Okay.
We're good. Bruce Dickinson.
Here.
Fernando Lira. Okay. Mahesh Udata. Not here. Darren Campbell.
Here, and you got mine right.
Thank you. All right, North Bethany Service District for Roads, Bruce Young.
Here.
Sarah Beachy.
Here.
Alicia Gruber.
Here.
Dan Reed.
Here.
And Prema Patel is excused, so now we'll go to the commissioners. Commissioner Willie.
Here.
Commissioner Therese.
Here.
Commissioner Rogers.
Here.
Vice Chair Fye.
I'm present.
Chair Harrington.
Here.
All right. Now I'll turn it over to Miss Angie and Mr. Mund.
Wonderful to see everyone, and we're pleased to be with you tonight to kick off our first Budget Committee meeting. As you may recall, we did have a budget orientation, which many of you were actually able to attend, and we took a significant amount of time to do introductions and also talk about what the budget means to you as an individual and why would you serve and why have you chosen to serve on the Budget Committee. For the purposes of this evening, we will just do brief introductions, name, and what budget committee you're serving on for staff, name, and role within the Washington County organization. So I will start, and I'm going to turn it to my left to Bruce, Tanya, Angie, and I serve as the Washington County Administrator and your budget officer.
Good evening, Bruce Dickinson, ESPD, URMD, Budget Committee. I'm a member just last year. This is my second, full year. Happy to be here.
Bruce Young, I'm on the North Bethany Service District for Roads Committee.
Bruce, you want to repeat that? I don't think your mic is on.
Did you guys hear me? They did. I'm loud.
Nafis Fai, Commissioner for District 1, and all the budgets.
Joe Everton, County and SDL number 1.
Darren Campbell on the ESPD URMD Budget Committee.
Melissa Laird on the County and SDL1 Budget Committee.
Catherine Harrington, elected board chair. I'm on all of the budget committees.
Dick Steinbergy, I'm on the ESPD URMD committee, my second year.
Pam Treese, Commissioner, District 2.
Karen Boland, I'm on the Washington County and the SDL1 committee, and this is my third time.
Jerry Willie, County Commissioner, District 4.
Hi, Jeff Sarafa, and I'm on the County Budget Committee in the Service District for Lighting number 1, and this is my first year.
Sig Eulander, County Budget Committee, Lighting District, District Commissioner, District number 4.
Courtney.
Oh, sorry. My name is Courtney Duke-Dreesen, Deputy County Counsel.
Hi, I'm Danny Ledesma. I'm an Assistant County Administrator.
And I'm Greg Munn, the County CFO.
And I would also like to mention, thank you. So to our budget committee members online, I really appreciate the table pointing very quickly to online. So Commissioner Rogers, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Roy Rogers, Washington County Commissioner, District 3.
And Commissioner Rogers is feeling under the weather today, so if you need to bogue out at any time, go ahead, because we know that this presentation is this whole meeting is being recorded, so you'll be able to catch up at another time.
Thank you.
Sarah, how about you?
I'm Sarah Beachy. I'm on the North Bethany County Service District for Roads.
Thank you. I'm just calling out by location on the screen in front of me. Dan.
Hello, Dan Reed, also on the North Bethany Community Service District for Roads.
And Alicia, you'll round us out.
Hi, I'm Alicia Gruber. I'm also on the North Bethany Community Service District for Roads.
Thank you.
I would also thank you, Chair, for mentioning that. I would also like to mention that Steve King, our budget manager, is in the office and is in the room, and he will be doing a portion. Steve, can you stand up? So he will be doing a portion of the presentation at the end of tonight's meeting. And with that, I will turn it over to our CFO, Greg Munn, for the budget committee actions.
Great, thank you. Just want to give you a quick overview on what we're doing tonight. Kevin, can we get the presentation up? There we go. Thank you. Okay, so just an overview of the activities this evening. We'll welcome and introductions. We just went through that. We'll roll into budget committee actions, which is a combination of electing the chairs and vice chairs for each of the committees, and then briefly talking about procedures. Then Ms. Angie will do a preview, or not a preview, do an overview of our assistant county administrators and the roles they play, as that'll be important as we move into the budget, or the budget information coming up. She'll deliver the budget message. I'll provide a financial update. Danny, to my right here, will do the strategic plan update and a budget equity tool update. And then Steve King will come up and will actually walk through the budget document that's in front of you. And part of what he'll do is to highlight some of the changes for those of you that have been around from last year that will be important in terms of as you walk through and study the budget. It'll be super helpful. And then we'll talk about, just closing up, we'll talk about the procedures, we'll talk about the upcoming meeting and some more details with that. So with that, first on the agenda is budget committee actions and election of chair and vice chair for each budget committee. So I'm going to turn it over to the chair of the Washington County and SDL #1 committee from last year to take the honors and do that for that committee this year.
Okay. So of the people that are here, we're ready to open up nominations for chair for this year. Are there any nominations for the chair? After we're done with chair, then we'll do vice chair. Are there any nominations for chair?
Could I just make a comment
Yes,
first?
please.
As an overview, the Board of Commissioners really appreciates your volunteering, your time, and your expertise in serving on the budget committees. And we live and breathe this stuff all the time, right? And we've provided budget direction previously. We've just received the proposed budget as well. But we really appreciate having chairs and vice chairs for each of these budget committees that are not Board of Commissioner members. And just in case you haven't heard that before, or it helps for you to hear it again, thank you. And back to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I will say, having served as chair a couple of times, the staff does the heavy lifting, and we just kind of participate and add as we can, and it's not that tough. So now, we ready to move on? Nominations are open for chair of the budget committee for 24, 25, right? Are there any nominations?
I nominate Joe, if you're interested.
I didn't hear what he said.
Yes.
He said he was interested.
Oh,
She
Joe.
nominated Joe.
Okay, Joe Everton has been nominated as chair. Are there any other nominations?
I'll nominate Karen Boland.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So now how do we do an election?
I
Are there
move
any other
nominations.
nominations?
I move nominations closed.
Okay, nominations moved, that would be seconded. Nominations are now closed. So now what?
Who gets to vote on this?
Everybody who's on the county budget and service district for lighting number 1. We're on the first bullet.
Okay.
So yes, there's 10 votes, so it's the 5 commissioners and the 5 members of this committee are votes. So we'll do a roll call vote, and hopefully there is no tie, but if there was, we'll flip a coin.
Roll call vote.
Yes. So we'll start with the members. So Sig Ulander?
I'll cast mine for Joe.
Okay. Jeff Sarafa?
I'll vote for Joe Everton.
Okay. Melissa Laird?
Joe.
Okay. Karen?
I'll vote for Joe.
Okay.
He wants it, he can have it.
Joe?
I vote for Joe.
Okay. Commissioner Rogers?
Well, I was going to vote for Karen, but if she doesn't want to do it, then
I'll be vice chair. I can be vice
I'll
chair.
vote for Joe.
There we go.
Okay. Commissioner Willie?
I'll vote for Joe.
Commissioner Treese?
I'll vote for Karen.
Thank you.
Okay. Vice Chair Fye?
Joe.
Okay. And Chair Harrington?
I'll go with Joe.
Okay. The motion passes 9-1 to make Joe the new chair for fiscal year 24-25.
Very nice.
I'd like to make a nomination for Karen Boland for vice chair for the Washington County and Service District for Lighting Number 1 Budget Committee.
Third.
Any other nominations? Won't put you back in that
Okay.
hot seat again. How's that?
Motion to close nominations.
Okay.
Ready for a vote?
Yep.
Thank you, Rick.
I'll give it to you, Mr. Chair.
Who? Oh, yeah, Joe.
Joe's the chair.
Oh, right. Well, Kevin, can you just call the roll call?
Yeah, well, figuring there's no
Oh,
other
since there's
nomination.
no opposition.
Yeah.
All those
We
in
have-
favor of Karen?
Please say aye or raise your hands.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Karen is
Pass the
hereby
sucker down.
the vice chair. Okay,
I love it.
but we need to keep going. Joe?
Yes, so now moving on to ESPD UMRD Budget Committee. So this is now the board and the UMRD ESPD members. So let's see.
So I'll take care of this one. I'll call for nominations for chair of ESPD URMD Budget Committee. Any nominations?
I nominate Dick Steinbergy.
I second.
Okay. Any other nominations? Is there a motion to close nominations?
Motion to close.
Okay, so all those in favor of appointing Dick Steinbergy as the chair of the ESPD URMD Budget Committee, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
And now we're going to accept nominations for vice chair of ESPD URMD Budget Committee. Are there any nominations? Who would like to get some experience?
I would
Go for it.
I would nominate Sarah Beachy.
Sarah, are you willing to do it?
It's not on that one.
North
Oh, I'm
Bethany.
sorry.
Sorry, no. We're on ESPD URMD. You're right. Thank you.
We're on vice, Pam.
We're on vice chair for ESPD
I'm sorry. I went to
URMD.
the next one. I apologize.
I would like to nominate Bruce.
Bruce Dickinson? Would you be willing?
And I'm going to decline.
Okay.
Okay.
How about your other Bruce? He's not on the other one. Yeah.
How about Darren?
I'll do it.
How about Darren?
I'll do it.
Great.
Okay.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Nominations closed. Can somebody make that?
Motion to close?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of appointing Darren Campbell as Vice Chair of ESPD URMD Budget Committee, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Darren, you're it. Thanks. Next, we're going to move on to the North Bethany Service District for Roads Budget Committee Budget Committee. Thank you. Are there any nominations for the Vice Chair of North Bethany CSDR?
Yes, I would like to nominate Sarah Beachy, and I apologize for doing it early.
I think do we do the chair first?
Did I say Vice Chair? See what happens?
I started it. I started it. My apologies.
No, I screwed up. Sarah, would you be willing to serve as chair? Since you're
Yes.
not, okay, great. Are there any other nominations for chair of North Bethany CSDR?
No, but I'll second the nomination of Sarah.
Thank you, Dan. Are there any other nominations? Motion to
Motion to close?
second of that motion to close?
Second.
Okay, great. All those in favor of appointing Sarah as the chair of North Bethany CSDR, please raise your hand or say aye. Thanks,
Aye.
everybody. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. You are it, Sarah, for the chair. Next, just in case we need to make sure, just in case you can't make it to a meeting, we need to make sure we have a vice chair. So
I'll
here-
nominate, I'll
Go.
nominate Dan Reed for vice chair.
Dan, would you accept?
I would, thank you.
Okay. So there's,
Second the nomination?
okay, great. All those in favor of appointing Dan Reed as vice chair for North Bethany CSDR, please raise your hand or say aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. So that's it. We have in summary, we have for the Washington County and Service District for Lighting Number 1, we have Joe Everton as chair, Karen Bolin as vice chair. For ESPD URMD Budget Committee, we have Dick Steinbergy as chair and Darren Campbell as vice chair. For the North Bethany Community Service District for Roads Budget Committee, we have Sarah Beachy as chair and Dan Reed as vice chair. Did I get that all right, everybody?
Did. Good job.
Okay, terrific. And now we need to review the Budget Committee procedures.
Thank you for helping us get through that.
Somebody has to bumble and make all kinds of mistakes.
In front of you, you have a two-page document called Budget Committee Procedures, and the purpose of this is just to sort of summarize what the different elements of being on the Budget Committee and what it means. And I'll just point out a couple of things here for you.
It's in our sleeve, Pam. For those of us with 3-ring binders, it's in the sleeve of the cover.
Yep.
Can we
On
check
page
online?
On page 2, you'll notice number 2 under Budget Committee meetings. The one thing I wanted to point out here is that as you're going through studying the budget document, which is in front of you, the thick document, over the course of the week, you may have questions, and there's an email address right there. It's in blue, finance_budget@washingtoncountyor.gov. That's where we'll take your questions, we'll collect all of them, and we'll provide answers to the group. So what we found is that oftentimes there's questions that somebody has that really more than one person has, so it's useful to share that.
In addition, for transparency, we do also post those Q&As to the website, so the public also has the benefit of seeing those question and answers.
Good point, thank you. The other point I want to make is sometimes there's questions about how to facilitate a public meeting, particularly if you're the chair or vice chair and you're in charge. There's the last page is facilitating a public meeting. One of the sections in here, number 2, is eventually when we get to the motion to approve the budget, this is some draft language here, but we will provide very specific language so when it comes that time you can actually read it into the record. We'll have it all ready and set to go. And that's it. Any questions on that part? Great. I'll turn it back over to Ms. Angie.
So this evening, Danny Ledesma, one of our assistant county administrators who also serves as our strategic planning officer, had introduced herself. This slide also shows our other two assistant county administrators, Marnie Kyle and Aaron Calvert. They are actually away this week, so they couldn't be here tonight. This is just a listing of the departments they will be providing budget presentations to you. Many of these departments are under their direct supervision and or their liaisons to those departments, such as our elected department directors, Sheriff's Office, and the DA, for example. So you'll be seeing a lot of them. And so I do before I open budget message, want to welcome you again to this first budget committee meeting. And this is a change in process from last year. This process tonight kicks off with the budget message and really orientation overview to this budget. We will be diving deeper during your daytime sessions into the details of the budget. This proposed fiscal year 24-25 budget comes at a time with both hope and continued challenge at Washington County. We are grateful for the availability of limited duration and one-time resources, allowing us to better position our organization and community we serve for the years ahead. We're also challenged by the long constraint revenue framework within much of the organization must navigate in order to deliver even basic county services. This is the tale of two counties and can be seen throughout the fiscal year 24-25 proposed budget. On one hand, the proposal supports the expansion of some services and programs, and on the other hand, it cuts service levels in the interest of budget balancing and ensuring that, at least, state-mandated service requirements are met. A clear strength in the face of these challenging times can be seen in the enormous talent and dedication of our employees. The services our employees support day in and day out include everything from hosting the county fair, providing access to recreational opportunities, holding elections, helping older adults access resources, providing public safety services, building and maintaining roads, signals and streetlights, issuing permits and licenses, administering rental assistance, and valuing property and collecting taxes. I would be actually here tonight listing all county services, and so at the spirit of time, I will just end that with period. Another strength in our ongoing engagement in building capacity in systems and structures to be able to deliver the most effective and impactful services possible to the community. We do this through a strategic coordination and organization-wide planning. On April 23rd, the Board of Commissioners adopted the Strategic Plan Update 2024 through 2028 that illuminates the current state of Washington County operations and a path forward for 5 years. With the adoption of the Strategic Plan Update, Washington County is continuing to take steps to operationalize the plan and build and implement foundational systems needed to continuously improve our organization in service to our community. The Strategic Plan Update from 2024 to 2028 contains both documentation of our vision, mission, values, and approach, and a comprehensive listing of goals by the 5 areas of Washington County's government. These values shown through the plan's guiding principles and 4 fundamentals, among other places. This information is included in your budget materials received this evening. The One Washington County approach, together with the board's budget principles and priorities, supports reasonable and equitable decision-making and can be seen throughout this budget proposal. Each budget cycle, the Board of County Commissioners gives budget direction to the county administrator and budget officer. That's myself, and that occurs no longer than January of each year. In addition to the principles and priorities, the direction is based on the budget forecast, which is typically heard by the board in fall. For this proposed budget, the direction was to look at flat, 3%, and 5% scenarios. Departments could also submit ad packages that aligned with the board's principles and priorities. Fiscal year 24-25 is also the third year of the evolution of a budget equity tool. And Ms. Dani Ledesma, Assistant County Administrator, will touch on that this evening. And this year, one of the key improvements is you'll see in the budget equity tool woven throughout this budget document. This ongoing financial sustainability and planning does not take place over one single fiscal year, but instead it's achieved over multiple years of commitment, rigor, and learning. So I did mention the continuing challenges to the county's financial framework, and let me dive in a bit more into that. In a new section of the proposed budget called the Budget Summary, we outlined the financial context for the county this year, starting with persistent limitations forced onto all local governments in Oregon. This new section aligns with the government finance officers, that's called GFOA, best practices for budgets, as we strive to receive a Budget Excellence Award within the future. This does also result in my budget message to be shorter than my previous 2 years because we're breaking some of that content out into other sections. So be assured that information is still contained within the budget. Mr. Greg Munn, CFO, Treasurer, and Steve Kang, Budget Manager, will be talking a bit more about financial context and budget department structure later in the agenda. On the revenue side, Oregon's property tax system continues to restrict this largest, most flexible source of funding for Washington County and many local governments in Oregon, that is property tax. The effect is a constrained revenue source that does not keep up with service demands and has its own unique negative impact in Washington County as our population grows relative to our regional peers. And there will be a slide that will talk more about that phenomenon. On the expenditure side, most general fund supported services are facing reductions this year in order to close a $10 million gap between projected revenue and anticipated expenditures. I want to stress that it is the responsibility of the budget officer to present a balanced budget. I want to repeat this. It's the responsibility of the budget officer to present a balanced budget to the budget committee. Through a strategic One Washington County approach, we've achieved balance through reductions. This budget maintains basic mandated services, keeps existing workforce intact to the greatest extent possible, and uses fewer one-time funds to achieve this balance than prior budgets. There are general fund investments that address the strained public safety and justice system. This includes returning Community Correction Center to its full operational capacity. It builds a new courtroom due to an additional state-funded judge, and it maintains current specialty court service levels. It also preserves jail and other sheriff's office positions. I want to note, in April, the Board of Commissioners adopted Washington County's second-year capital improvement plan. This is a really monumental event that staff are incredibly proud of our One Washington County approach to this work. Within that capital improvement plan and woven into the proposed budget includes the financial needs to address our critical facility needs, multimodal improvement, thank you. I got on a roll and I forgot to advance the slide. And also our awaited enterprise resource planning modernization work. And what that is our finance, HR, our main software operating system. Although Washington County has benefited from some one-time revenue sources, such as strategic investment program, we have made concerted effort to reduce the county's reliance on such limited revenue when it comes to supporting ongoing operations. As a result, the reduced general fund expenditures in this proposed budget lean towards supporting state and federally mandated services, leaving fewer and fewer discretionary dollars for anything else. Exceptions to this approach to general fund balancing can be found in places like the public safety area, a system facing overlapping and compounding challenges, where limited investments are proposed to further reductions were avoided this year. This approach is intended to maintain mandated service requirements, restore public safety system balance, and strengthen it for emerging challenges described throughout this proposed budget. Beyond the general fund, one-time American Rescue funding is assisting with foundational systems such as implementation of the Enterprise Resource Planning Modernization Project to ease access to and use critical financial and human resources data. I must say I'm personally very excited about this, and I can't wait until our first reports come out. Regional supportive housing service dollars are allowing the county to build out a system of care for houselessness individuals that has virtually eliminated the existence of large homeless encampments over the last 3 years and provided a pathway for more dignified, human-centered future for nearly 2,000 formerly homeless within Washington County. A prior allocation of Oregon Health Plan dollars to be combined with other non-general fund revenue is dedicated to the development of a new center for addiction, treatment, and triage, also called CAT, that would centralize access to person-centered health and social services in this vital area. Each of these foundational projects hold the promise of bringing greater effectiveness and supporting better outcomes for our community moving forward. This year's proposed budget depicts 2 distinct realities for this organization. Guided by the values and aspiration of the Board of Commissioners that they have infused into the Strategic Plan Update 2024-2028 and the board's budget priorities and principles. The proposed budget seeks to support our organization in collaborative problem solving, continuous improvement, and strategic decision making. Nonetheless, the proposed budget also challenges the organization as resources, particularly in the general fund, require reductions for a 3rd year in a row, prompting budget decisions meant to prioritize mandated services, avoid layoffs wherever possible, and shore up a public safety system that's strained. Despite this tale of 2 counties, which is a mixture of realities, I remain cautiously hopeful for the future. By partnering with a dynamic set of partners, including governmental jurisdictions, community organizations, and businesses, our employees live the guiding principles of integrity, trust, accountability, and stewardship. We carry these values as we engage in dialogue about the resources and expenditures required to meet critical community needs. The foundational management systems the county continues to develop and implement will ultimately strengthen decision-making and planning. Some of these key foundational management systems include a One Washington County service level assessment, examining our services and at what level we deliver them across the county and how are they funded. Unified work planning, a One Washington County work plan that pulls together strategies from all departments into one document, and the development of key performance indicators and transparent reporting. My cautionary message is that more scrutiny and big picture problem solving will be needed in the years ahead, particularly as it relates to our general fund, so that we can continue to plan and be committed for a more stable financial future. Thank you to all the employees and department leaders involved in the development of this budget proposal. Thank you to the steadfast finance and budget team who knit together the aspirations of our county with the appropriate resources amidst the challenges and opportunities. Finally, I want to thank you, the various budget committees, including the members of our Board of County Commissioners, for the work in reviewing and considering this proposed budget for fiscal year 24-25. And that concludes my message. And with that, I will turn it to Greg Munn to dive a bit deeper into a finance update.
It's a hard act to follow.
So, Mr. Munn, just before you start, we did have Fernando Lira from the ESPD and UMRD join the meeting. So,
thank you.
Where? Online?
Online, yes,
Oh.
he just has his camera off.
Thank you. All right, finance update. So a lot of what I'll share tonight is going to be familiar information to certainly to all the board members and probably several of the Community Budget Committee members, if you're new to this will be somewhat new, but I thought it was important to be able to lay the foundation for this story, our financial story over the last few years, and as we move into actually reviewing the detailed budget over the next few weeks. So focus really is on the general fund here, and I want to go over our key budget challenges. I've got a list of those. What have we done so far, and how are we doing in terms of making progress on those? And then the last bullet was solutions, but that's really going to be saved for the May 15th budget meeting. Just didn't get a chance to take that off. So with that, here are some of the key budget challenges that are in front of you on this slide. There, as Ms. Angie mentioned, this is the third year in a row in addressing a budget shortfall. And essentially, what is a budget shortfall? It's we don't have enough annual operating revenue to cover our operating expenditures, so we have to balance those two. We've made progress. So in FY23, we had a $31 million shortfall and $25 million during this year. So a year ago, we were having that conversation here. And then this year, it's working down to $10 million. So there's some progress there. As Ms. Angie mentioned, as the budget officer, she's required by law to present a balanced budget. So within those constraints, the finance team and really folks that are doing the budget work around the county have put together this budget here for your consideration.
Mr. Munn, if I can just touch base on the first bullet point. If you've seen one budget, you've seen one budget. Each budget is very different with the challenges that we face. Continued new mandates from the state, and many being unfunded or underfunded, are really challenging. Increasing and changing community demographics and who we serve and how we need to serve the community is part of the challenges that we're faced with in each operational budget cycle. So I just want to highlight that point as we look at where we've been over the last 3 years.
Great, thank you. So the third bullet really has 3 sub-bullets to it, which sort of tells a really good story about the general fund, well, government in general, but the expenditures that the dollars that a county spends are really influenced by the market. Primarily, if you think about labor costs, they're influenced or driven by what's going on in the market. And if there's a high demand for labor, then that's going to push those costs up. On the other side of it, the county can't go out and generate additional property tax revenue easily. Well, you can't do it under the property tax system now, but it can't be, you get a capped revenue base. So we have a ceiling on our revenue that's given to the county, yet we're dealing with expenses that are out of our control, that are really driven by the market. I think that's important to know. Over the last few years, we sometimes have over-relied on one-time funds and SIP revenue. You've heard us talk about SIP revenue. When we say one-time revenue, it's a multi-year one-time revenue. It means it's not ongoing like property taxes are. There are certain, the agreements have terms to them, and once they sunset, that revenue goes away. So we want to be careful about overutilizing those and having a balanced approach to that. The SIP fund balance at the end of FY22 was $10 million. It was steadily declining, so that's one of the items that we've worked on with the board in terms of a policy, and you'll see some numbers here in the budget that show that we're starting to build that up. Our contingency in the general fund was underfunded. We've resolved that and are moving forward with a fully funded contingency. And probably one of the areas, it wasn't necessarily a budgetary issue, but we had a lot of budget activity in the general fund that probably should have been elsewhere. We had special revenues. We had functions that would have been normally in a special revenue fund, which those are functions that are funded by grants that are specific to that function. Or we had enterprise type services. Those are functions that earn their own money like a private business. So those were commingled in the general fund, and it made it a challenge to tell the general fund story, to make the general fund transparent, and to help other people understand. This is a graph that many of you have seen, and really all this shows is over the last 5 years that the red line on the top, those are expenditures that were growing on an annual average rate of 7.7% a year, and the green on the very bottom, that's revenue growing at 5.8% per year. So you can, there's obviously a gap, and they're both growing at two different rates, which is indicative of what we were talking about just a couple of slides ago. So that was really the challenge that we began with this. If you take those numbers, those 5-year numbers from FY17 through FY22, and you extrapolate them out over another 5-year period, you can see that that gap between expenditures on the red line and the green line being revenue, it grows. And so in the past, we've used SIP revenue to fund that gap between the two. But if you look out 5 years, if you just grow those naturally at their existing rates over the first 5 years, you can see that that gap doubles by FY27. So I thought it would be helpful to just kind of give a flow of revenue, and that's a good way to kind of explain at least the revenue situation for the county. But there's really two types of revenue. There's unrestricted revenue and there's restricted revenue. I'll start with restricted revenue. Those are dollars that the county receives that are for specific purposes. So for example, we might receive a grant in our public health department that's for a specific function that can only be used for that function within public health. So grants, fee-for-service, room tax revenues are examples of that. They have narrow use. They're not discretionary. On the other hand, unrestricted revenue are dollars that can be used at the county's direction for a much broader set of functions. For example, law and justice, elections, public health. The last bullet there says they're competitive, and what that means is we have to balance the allocation of those resources amongst several different functions. So within assessment and taxation, within our law and justice functions, and so forth. So two types of revenue. Another way to look at that is the graph on the upper left. That pie itself would be the entire revenue that's in the general fund, so, or entire revenue in the county altogether. The wedge, about 19% of it, is our unrestricted revenue. And if you follow the line, the next graph in the lower right, that comprises, that's our unrestricted revenue. Most of that you can see is in property taxes. That's the two parts of the wedge that are in blue. And then SIP being the wedge in yellow. The difference in our property taxes is that a portion of our property tax revenue, the portion in the upper right-hand corner, is dedicated towards transportation and the library system. So they are, although they're unrestricted, they have been dedicated over the years to those two services. So the point here is to just paint the picture of, someone will say, well, you have a budget of $2.2 billion. Where can you find, you must be able to find a budget solution to be able to fund that gap. And the answer here, what I'm trying to paint the picture of, is that our revenue becomes very narrow when you take away all of those revenue that are committed to other purposes. And this is another graph, and I'll talk about it, but Tanya might want to jump in here. This shows our property taxes, our property tax revenue with our nearby counties, so Multnomah County, Clackamas County, and then Washington County on the left-hand side. So on the left hand, you'll see Washington County with a population of 610,000. Our tax rate is $2.25. We'll just focus in on that. But about 90 cents of that is committed to the library and transportation. So the amount that's really available for discretionary spending is much less than that. And you can compare that to Clackamas at $2.98 and Multnomah County at $4.34. The other interesting part here, and we could draw a line through this, but you'll see the dot above the Washington County at 58%. That's the percentage of population growth from 97 to 23. So the county has grown at 58%, whereas Clackamas has grown at 53%, and Multnomah has grown at 39%. So there's this inverse relationship between growth and property tax rates in the county.
The only thing on this I would just like to clarify is in financial language, committed, transferred can be used interchangeably. So it has been the policy choice to transfer the 90 cents to MISTIP and libraries. So if you do take the MISTIP and libraries, so the transportation and library funding, that bottom section, so just is what we have for discretionary general funds spending. When you take the line of population, it really shows the challenge that Washington County is in to deliver core services that each of the 3 counties are mandated to deliver as our population has grown over time. And so when I spoke about strain on the system, to me, this graph really illustrates why is there that strain. And then another question that comes up, why doesn't Washington County deliver at this service level or this service similar to Multnomah and Clackamas County?
Thank you. All right, so I think I wanted to just take a couple of minutes to talk about progress, what we've been up to over the last few years to deal with some of our budgetary issues. And on the left-hand side there, you'll see we have a list of our strategies and tactics. So one, which I had mentioned earlier, is to reduce our reliance on our one-time SIP revenue. And if you slide to the right, it's in green because we've made progress. We're projecting a $30 million balance in FY23. This was down from $43 million in 22. So we were using in 23, we used less SIP to fill that gap than we had in the prior year. As well, declining SIP balance, that was $10 million in FY22. At the end of FY23, it's $25 million. The one that's in red that means that we haven't been able to make progress in it because it's something that's at the state level is, again, resolving that budget gap between our expenses that are growing at a market pressure rate versus a revenue that's capped. And those are something we don't have control over, or because our revenue structure is dictated by Measure 50. Fully fund contingency to 4 months property tax. The board approved a new contingency and reserve policy in February, which we've followed and is built into this budget that is before you tonight. Likewise with the SIP fund policy, that was part of that policy that the board adopted and is built into this budget as well. MISTIP program, we've made some progress there by bond funding or future bond funding for some of our prior year projects and a bond cost sharing program. That was approved by the board as it was no longer feasible to fund those items with cash. The library program is funding and the governance evaluation is underway there, so we've made some progress. Aligned funding and services mandated to desired outcomes. We have a service level assessment underway at this point, which will help us with that. Move special revenue funds out of the general fund. I mentioned this earlier, but we've dismantled the general fund, and in last year's budget, the budget that we're in now, we removed all the internal service functions and have them operating on their own. In the budget that's before you, we've pulled public health and some other items out and put them in their own special revenue fund. So you'll see the general fund smaller than it was this year because we've moved those functions out. Control growth in health insurance costs. We were initially estimating over a 20% increase in this budget year, and through the good work in HR, they were able to renegotiate that and restructure our health insurance to about a 6.3% increase. Implement best practices and reserve policies. Again, this was part of the contingency and reserve policy the board adopted in February. And as was mentioned earlier, create a capital improvement plan. Why would you do that? It helps us to look into the future to see some of the larger capital improvement initiatives that we need to address, and having them in one document so that we can plan to fund those into the future. So our second annual CIP was just approved by the board in April.
Chair, Everton, can I ask a question before we move to strategic plan about that prior slide?
Sure.
Or where do you?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So we're currently in FY '24, and we're here regarding proposed FY '25. So I'm really confused by the first two lines under progress. What is the statement for this proposed FY '25?
So the first line, reduce reliance on the one-time SIP revenue.
Have we achieved that?
That was this year, but as we move into next year, that's what we'll come back and report at the May 15th through 17th. So these are ending, so FY '23 is a budget year that's over. We just finished that. We're not done with FY '24 yet. So we don't have an FY '24 number to report.
So why don't we just cross it out?
Making progress.
But we have a proposed budget, so the proposed budget must propose something for one-time SIP
And we'll report,
revenues.
yeah, we'll report what's in the budget compared to where we've been in the past at the budget meeting.
Okay.
And the same with the second one.
Commissioner Rogers had a question online, followed by Jeff.
Thank you, Kevin. Sorry, I'm just feeling a little bit under the weather, but Greg, I appreciate the transparency. I appreciate seeing the numbers, and as I've talked to you in the past, we're dealing with a one-year budget, but it's not so much about just the numbers in this year's budget. It's about the policies going forward, and this board has done a good job of trying to tackle some of those issues. But why don't you kind of thread the needle a little bit in regard to what's happening in 26 as much as you can? You got a 25 budget you're proposing. I get it. You're proposing some carryover funds. I get that as well. You've got about a 1.8 difference between revenues and expenditures on an annual basis. So that's about another $18 million a year that you're going to be short just if things stay the same. You've indicated that you got about $10 million. You're looking up to $10 million drop in SIP funds. You're also anticipating some decrease in some federal funding that we've seen in the past. We're proud of it. We've put together a CIP plan, but we haven't funded it. So that's going to take some issues too. So is there just some general comment that you would like to make without getting too specific that this budget committee meeting, or this budget committee can take forward? Because most of these folks are going to be sitting here again a year from now, and you're going to be proposing potentially some changes in fund balance. So do you have some general comments?
I do, and I think I'd like to address those at the second budget committee meeting because we start talking about the future impact of not just the FY '25 budget, but as we move into 26 and beyond. And what comes to mind most readily is just the potential change in our SIP revenues.
Thank you. You will put a placeholder on that though, right? And then
Yep.
you'll address it. All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the SIP fund and policy. Can you go into more about that, how it's funded, how long it lasts, et cetera?
That's probably something I'll do on the 15th. I'll get into more details. All of this is wrapped together. Yeah, I'll expand on that.
Perhaps you could provide everybody with a short
You mean the
version.
16th? 15, 16, 17. Okay.
Yeah.
It's on, SIP is on the schedule for the 16th.
16th.
That's,
Yep.
So point of clarification, you have declining SIP balance on the left, and then on the right at the bottom, you have annual CIP update approved. So you're going to explain both of those, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. CIP is different than SIP. Yeah. Yep.
Just the acronyms, because this can become acronym soup. So SIP stands for the Strategic Investment Program, which is an economic development program. And then CIP stands for Capital Improvement Plan, and that's where we look at transportation, technology, parks, other assets, and establish a 5-year plan, and then that plan is tied to our budget.
And that's already been adopted by the
In
board.
April.
Yeah.
Just a very simple math question. Remind me again on total revenue versus net operating revenue, what gaps that down, that 1.3%? So it's on page 5, but just in the high-level general
Back on
conversation.
slide 10.
Right, that's the general fund history. And rev at 1.7, but net operating at 5.8. What's the difference between, I get what the difference is. What causes the difference between the 7.1 to the 5.8? Is it cost of sales? Is it
So
just?
That's a good question. So the operating revenue, those are the dollars that come in every year, property taxes and so forth.
Top line.
Yep, top line. And of course, we know what the expenses are, the 7.7%. The difference between the two, the 7.1%, and it's not as important in this graphic as what we were talking about, but that's the amount of additional revenue that we've had to use to bridge the gap,
Got it. That
which
makes
is SIP. Yeah, yeah. I should have mentioned that earlier. Thank you.
That's right. I like the difference between 7.7 and 7.1 better than 7.7 and 5.8.
Yeah.
Since we're into questions, I don't know if you're ready for that or not, but looking back at slide number 14, I'm curious about the difference between the tax rates that Multnomah County has for property taxes versus the other counties. There's a historical basis for that, right?
Yes, and that's a complex question that we couldn't answer here tonight, and it was part of Measure 50 in 1996-97, and essentially it was the combining of the existing tax rates plus serial levies into a new tax rate. It wasn't exactly that straightforward of math. There was some adjustments here and there, but that was the context of it.
So conceptually, it was based on what the tax rates were at the time those measures went into effect.
Conceptually.
Sort of established a baseline. Got it.
Yeah, things were reduced and then
Yeah.
made
Okay.
permanent.
Yeah.
On that same slide, I had a question. So I've been reading about a limit of 3% increase, but it says these are permanent. So which part, how does that relate? Is it the yellow part that goes 3% or what goes 3%?
It's the assessed value that can grow at 3%. And so if you just have a 3% growth in your assessed value, then that would translate to a 3% increase in property tax revenue. So you'll hear us talk about revenue increases of 3%. It's really the assessed value that the property tax rate is applied to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep.
Where can we find the new contingency and reserve policy that was adopted in February so we could read that? Is that in our package?
It's on the website, but I can send it to you. Yep, I'll send you a link. Darren?
Back to slide 14. I'm just curious, the MSTIP and the libraries mandate, is that, who mandated that? Is that a voter mandate or?
So we had discussed Measure 50, Measure 5. So at that time, MSTIP and the libraries were a serial levy. The board made a policy decision because those serial levies were rolled into that permanent rate, create the permanent rate. So to treat MSTIP and WCCLS as ongoing serial levies. So it was a policy decision based on, frankly, the fiscal state that we've been in as Washington County. Last year's adopted budget and this year's proposed budget looks at property tax utilization as a whole and balancing those systems of service.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Good questions, thank you. All right, I am going to turn it over to Ms. Ledesma here to talk about the strategic plan update.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so excited I get to talk about the next two elements. I'll be, over the next 10 minutes, talking with you about the strategic plan.
Can you move the mic over?
Oh, sorry. You're asking me to talk louder, which we'll remember. So the strategic plan update and the budget equity tool update, and I think, in my opinion, these are two examples where our board's leadership works really well within staff implementing on that leadership. So our board has heard and was deeply involved in the development of the strategic plan update. So I'm excited to be able to present this to the committee members as information that can give you more context, and that for our board members, I'll try to make it jazzy because they've heard this a couple times, so I'll try to keep it exciting. As many of you may know, in this slide right here, really point to the history of our strategic planning in the county. Washington County has had a robust history of strategic planning, and it was the board's intent to continue on that tradition. But I want to take a moment to really recognize the board's pivot through the wisdom of the board and recognizing the current conditions. This strategic plan update is not a wholesale, full community-involved visioning process and planning process, but rather was the recognition that we needed to pivot to an update, and that's why we're using that language, recognizing sort of where we were. And you've heard our county administrator and you'll hear us talk about the need to develop these fundamental systems, these management systems, to be able to improve the workings of the county. And so this strategic plan update represents that pivot and was adopted on Tuesday, April 23rd. The intention is that over the next 5 years, we'll continue to build on these, build on the vision of this plan, while also continuing to build our capacity so that we can engage in a sort of deeper community visioning process in 2028. So the strategic plan, I encourage you to follow along. You have a copy in your packet. You have a copy of the adopted plan in your packet. But for an overview, I wanted to let you know that there are 8 key elements in our strategic plan update. We have an introduction, which really describes the intent of the document. I'm going to skip forward to our looking forward and appendix to remind you that the looking forward gives highlights into how we will utilize the strategic plan update by county staff under the sort of board's sort of leadership and vision. And then our appendix includes some pretty key documents. It includes the timeline that gives you, context, which is more of the slide that you saw before, but it also provides information about the county services and how the county and state share services, as well as a glossary. Our vision and mission are important elements. These really are intended to talk about how we're modernizing the county and to really align language so that it's very clear that folks understand our vision of a one Washington County and our mission of modernizing and designing the future. Our guiding principles you'll see infused throughout our work. These 6 key values inform the work of the county as well as ground our aspirations and remind us about the sort of how. And we go into more in depth in our 4 fundamentals, which is a guiding document that answers how work should get done and our county's approach to problem solving. And I want to just pause really quickly and talk a little bit about these 4 fundamentals. The first one is about really defining that ethos of what does it mean to be one Washington County. And it's that calling on us to act with a collective mindset, recognizing our mutuality and also our mutual interdependencies. In Fundamental 2, you heard our county administrator, you've heard our board talk about how important it is to recognize the people of Washington County, the staff, the employees who get all of the work done. And but it's not just recognition of the staff importance, but also on that approach of building capacity, of embracing learning, and embracing that sort of positive culture so that Washington County is a place, a destination, a place where people want to work and work towards some of the challenges that we have before of us. The Fundamental 3 sort of recognizes the unique role of Washington County and our aspiration to continue to be dynamic and to understand that partnership can take on many forms. And you'll see in that appendix where you see the difference between sort of the county and the state and in terms of service provision. And then Fundamental 4 describes, which is, kind of what you all will be doing is sort of thinking about like how we can prioritize critical needs. How can we really ensure that the work that the county does is focused on those most in need, while also recognizing our unique role throughout the county in relationship to our other jurisdictions. The next section is our organizational goals. This is where every department, divided by 5 primary areas of government, has laid out their strategic goal for the next 5 years. Key to that information about the goal is also a description. It was really important to this board that as we talk about the work of the county, that we are also making sure that someone could open this up and understand, what does taxes, what is the Department of Taxation and Assessment? So there's a nice description and a goal there. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the engagement that the board led with in the development of this plan, particularly around our organizational goal setting. So the board identified key stakeholders important to keep in the loop and sort of keep in the process of the development of this plan. That included our ACRE, which is our I just lost what that meant. The
Advisory Council on Racial Equity.
Advisory Council on Racial Equity. Thank you so much. As well as our CCI and our CPOs, which is our community involvement by geography, and our super volunteers, as well as staff. And so one of the things that was really exciting and thrilling to watch was the dynamic between the board providing leadership and vision and hearing and being really open to a process where our Washington County leaders were sort of drafting goals and the sort of interplay and the back and forth and sort of the refinement of those goals. It was really an exciting process. You can find the strategic plan in your packets, but also if you want to see it online, it's there. I also just want to thank our fabulous comms team. A lot of the feedback that we got in the engagement with the broader community was appreciation for the organization of the plan and the way that it was laid out. So you've heard a lot about sort of how can we continue to build on those foundational systems, and you heard both Tanya and Greg talk about building these foundational management systems. And the idea is that the strategic plan update is that sort of strong anchor that really provides the guidance and illuminates where we are as we continue to build and develop that capacity through these key management systems. And so you'll see in this slide right here, which is, I think, it's definitely my favorite slide. It's definitely Greg and Tanya's favorite slide, where we talk about these like key management systems. So the board has set the vision and the direction for the county. Now, how do we take that vision and translate that into action, where we're really sort of building on the capacity of the county? And so you've heard about the capital improvement plan, the CIP, not to be mistaken for the SIP, how we're building on that. You've heard about a little teaser about our service level assessment. And then you heard Tanya talk briefly about the development of single department work plans that will lead into a one Washington County work plan, consolidated work plan, that where we are in the midst of developing those key performance indicators so that we can, in a transparent way, let you all and the broader community know about our progress against our aspirations, eventually leading us to a broader community vision in the next in 2028, which seems sooner than later. So I'm going to move on to the budget equity tool.
You want to answer questions?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
One, so does the strategic plan prioritize, if you don't have enough money for all your critical needs, does this plan give you direction for a priority direction for funding between the different departments, knowing that you've got critical needs in each department? You don't have enough to fund all your critical needs. Does this give you direction, well, this critical need in public safety is higher than or less than one in land use and transportation? Does it allow the budget committee to actually get to that level of detail so that you really have a crisp prioritization of all your critical needs?
No, it doesn't. I mean, I think that it does
We'd
provide.
love to.
Yeah, it provides.
But it's not a machine where we can crank it and it'll spit out the answer. Right.
It does invite you to look at the whole picture at a sort of higher altitude, if you will, to sort of see how all of those priorities fit together. And it is pretty comprehensive in that every department and every office is represented in those goals, but it doesn't sort of, have a hierarchy of one need versus the other.
One handout that I would refer to you that's in your packet is there's the board budget principles and priorities. Yep. And so this is the direction.
No, they're in here.
Oh, they're in there.
Yep. This is the direction the board had given to the county administrator in development of the budget. Melissa, taking this maybe to the micro level and kind of line item budgeting and weighing one item over another, it doesn't go to that level. The service level assessment that we're undergoing is a study assessment I know the board is looking forward to receiving. That will give a different layer. That layer will be, what are mandated services? What are discretionary services? Who do we deliver those services to? What are the funding sources of those services? And so I think that will be part of that piece to help answer that question.
But it's going to take a number of years
Yes.
for us to get to a nice, clear picture.
Right, to help guide it, because, all these needs are critical, right? We're cutting critical needs. And we're also, does the strategic plan, it probably doesn't give you that level of, if we cut this, here's the other dominoes that will fall because of the relationships of everything. If we cut this, it also means this, and this are going to be underfunded because of the reliance of that service. So we talked about the ecosystem and that whole, how it's all connected. Does the strategic plan at all help in understanding that better so you really understand the implications of a budget decision more holistically?
No, I will say I am incredibly impressed with the staff work and the approach we take at Washington County in the budget development. Well, there's department directors in individual departments. The department directors do not work in silos in development of their budget. So what you will see in this proposed budget, I hope, because at least I see it, is public safety and justice coming together as a system. But it's not just the traditional public safety and justice. It's also our health and human services partners. It's also our library system. So there is thoughtful work that staff do put into their budget proposals. I can also share that departments, as they're developing their budgets, know that interconnectedness with their One Washington County peers and actually talk to them before they propose the cuts. And if I do this, what would that make to your department? So from an ecosystem, I know you may not see that, budget committee members, but I can just attest to that's just the culture and the fabric of how Washington County works.
Go ahead, Bruce, yeah.
Thank you. High level question. Last year I heard a bit about the One Washington County. It comes off very positive, right? Very front leaning, very excited about it. Yeah. The question that's not asked then is, are we excited about it because before it was a very siloed process with no tools, and this is a big improvement towards that? So maybe comment just on why are we excited? It's okay, but is it because it's an improvement from the processes of the past?
So Washington County has a deep-rooted history in working together, and that's not only at a staff level, it's elected level, it's cities, other partners. That really runs through the fabric. as we look at the societal challenges that we're faced as a county, we can no longer solve those challenges on a department by department basis. We have to look at the systems of service to really look at what are the outcomes we're striving for, and how do we come together as a One Washington County team to deliver that. Because as you've heard tonight already, there's not enough resources. So we do have to be mindful in sharing those resources and be creative. We are an interconnected technology society now, and that really mantra, how we work as a team within Washington County, is really about bringing that. Also, I feel strongly as county administrator, when welcoming new employees, what that expectation of how we work together is incredibly important. So for new employees, you're entering a One Washington County, and that's the expectation.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Do you think this one county approach will help if we get to the point where we have some services that we just cannot afford them, and we need to really look at different ways of funding it other than the budget? I mean, do you think if we get to that really tough problem that says we just can't do everything we're doing, and we really have to not do something, stop doing it, and what does that mean, and how could it get funded, and what are the different ideas? Will that be a potential outcome of this one county work plan, to where you make that tough call that says we just can't fund the libraries anymore? So how is that going to be done differently? That was just an example, right? Good. Will one county allow you to have that really global tough conversation that says we fundamentally need to maybe change some of the things that we fund in the future because we just can't afford it?
So I can say from the seat of county administrator, I'm confident that we will be able to do that, and I'm confident that we have already proven that we've done that. Over the last 3 years in the budget reductions departments have made, they have supported the budget. This is not the same type of working environment that I know some of my peers, county administrators, actually experience. So I have seen department directors and managers, employees at all levels, really come together and want to do what's in the best interest of the community. Of course, as resources become more strained, that's even more challenging, because we know each of our services touch a community.
Right.
And so this is not
pivotal, and
this
they're very
is not
important to somebody.
easy work. I will say, and I've used the phrase, we are down to bone now in the budget, and this proposed budget is really at that level. And so my cautionary message that I opened up with, I stand by, and I also stand by the over 2,400 Washington County employees that I'm confident will come forward under the board's leadership to do this work.
These are all really good questions, and I think that at the strategy level, one of the things that I would say is really exciting about working at Washington County and this One Washington County approach is that folks are engaged in these deeper level conversations and using that approach of One Washington County and collaboration, but then at the same time thinking about performance management and how we can continue to really lean into learning, and how we can use different tools like a budget equity tool to help to answer some of the tough questions that you're asking, because we all are contending with many of those issues. So how'd you like my transition there, Melissa? I believe it was at the last, at the introductory meeting, someone asked the question around how is equity sort of infused throughout? And so as you all know, our board has taken quite a bit of leadership passing our equity resolution. And this will be the third year that Washington County has utilized a budget decision-making tool with an equity focus. I want to talk to you a little bit about this evolution into year 3 and how this is a little bit different from the last year, where we're really trying to, again, fold into that learning mode, but also help to become really sharp in our decision making. So this tool this year is meant not only to be to help us get closer to decision making, but also to be a tool that helps in its process help us build skill and capacity at the county to do that. So this year we wanted to really, in utilizing this tool, we wanted to build on the process focused tool of the last 2 years, and also sort of really weave this into decision making, because we knew that this was going to be such a critical year, as Tanya talked about, like we're at the bone. We wanted to make sure that the budget equity tool, we saw this opportunity to really lean into that One Washington County ethos and really sort of fully integrate budget equity into all aspects of the budget development. And so this is one where our Office of Equity and Inclusion and Community Engagement really, there was this opportunity to really think about how to sort of like move that integration into Greg's finance office. We wanted to make sure that this continued to be user-friendly and that this was something that was clear and usable. And so as the budget scenarios were continuing to evolve, and we had that approval from the board around those 3 budget scenarios, we moved into developing this budget equity tool. So the first thing that we wanted to do in terms of building off of work from the last prior 2 years is that we wanted to give staff an opportunity to really sort of like build those muscles, build that capacity. So we provided some information, some critical data around our civil rights investments, as well as the demographics of staff, and be able to use that data from the last fiscal year and the last proposed budget as a way to anchor some of the analysis in terms of the tool.
Danny, before moving on, just for the budget committee, can you give an example of civil rights investments?
Sure. So civil rights investment would be investments that increase access. So some of our language access investments. Many of you who have been on the budget committee from last year, you'll notice in the summary, we basically use a lot of this summary language around how many internal and external org units we're making investments in, like language access, and use that as the financial data that folks were looking at in answering these questions.
And from a demographic standpoint, why is that important? Our community is becoming more diverse. I don't have all the stats on hand, but the number of languages spoken are increasing, with Spanish being the predominant language. As you hear from our assistant county administrators, significant pressures, for example, on our juvenile department and increasing language access, working with our juveniles, for example, even assessment, taxation, and records, and community members coming in for core records and vital information. That need for interpretation or bilingual employees is just increasing, and we're seeing that increase across the county.
Thanks, Tanya. And just one mention about the staff demographics. Our new chief of human resources, our new chief human resource officer pulled together demographic data that didn't just look at the sort of demographic data of all staff, but looked at newer staff, more tenured staff, and also the positionality of staff. And so folks had that information to be able to look to, again, to anchor an analysis. So Melissa, as you talked about like those tough questions, here are 4 tough questions that we thought that we would ask everyone to think about with that data to anchor these answers. So every department and office was given direction to answer 4 questions and to apply those 4 questions to the budget scenario. So as they were proposing a flat budget, how would they answer these 4 questions as they were considering a 3% reduction and a 5% reduction? How might there be changes to these scenarios? And so you'll notice that in our budget document, you have a summary of those, but was also really important and really, I think, evidence of sort of the growth and the capacity that's being built at Washington County was that in the budget presentations, each
we start, Kevin? We good?
All right, Budget Committee members, can we reassemble here?
I hate technology.
All right, calling Budget Committee members back to the table.
Here they come.
Calling Budget Committee members back to the table. Budget Committee members back to the table. All right, welcome back, everyone. And just a reminder to the Budget Committee members around the table to key your mic on green when you're speaking so we can pick that up for the video and audio.
Good evening, Budget Committee members. My name is Steve Kang, County's Budget Manager, and I just wanted to go over a brief overview of the budget document. It's rather a large document. It's 400 plus pages, but I'll give you essentially what the budget document contains so that it can be a little bit easier for you to navigate through the document. So in the very beginning of the document, you'll see a table of contents, and it contains essentially about 5 or 6 components. First one is introduction, which includes the budget message as well as the trends and initiatives and other summarized budget tables and financial summaries. It's followed by the operating budget by functional area. The county's budget organization is done in hierarchy, which is in the order of functional area, fund, organization unit, and programs. And to give you an example, functional area, general government, underneath there's a fund called the finance fund, and organization unit would be finance, and for program, it's financial services. So that's an example of the hierarchy that we use. And in the operating budget, predominant portion of the budget is consisting of the people. So it contains the actual operation of the county. And the next section is the non-operating budget. It's flipped on the list of bullets, but the non-operating budget is non-capital, non-operating. And non-operating budget includes debt service and also has some insurance funds and miscellaneous funds that's not considered operations. Capital budget is where you would see a capital projects. So that would be road projects. That would be the financial or the technology equipment, large technology equipments, and so on. So last piece of the budget document is service districts. Those are URMD, ESPD, and SDL, and so on. So those are the order of the table of contents. And in each of the budget or unit area, you'll see a budget analysis, and as well as the key issues. Those are the description of what the budget changes are over last year, or giving you some of the trends. Some of the changes that we made this year, so if you're a returning member of the Budget Committee, you might be familiar with seeing key issues within the beginning of the document, included in the trends and initiatives. And we've allocated that section to each of the org units, because of that's where they truly belong. It's a description of the key issues within the organization unit. So we've allocated that piece to each of the org units. Same thing with the budget equity tool. Instead of providing an overview, we've included those in the functional area level. So it gives you a budget equity tool impact within the functional area. So those are the changes, and one of the main change that we did on the financial summary table is following the guidelines of the GFOA of recommended order, as well as this is a requirement within the state of Oregon to provide 2 years of actuals, current year's adopted or modified budget, and then the proposed budget of next year. One thing to keep in mind is a budget is considered a ceiling that you can spend. You can never spend one dime above the budget. So you'll see all of the actuals will always be below the budget amount. So when you see the 22-23 actuals versus a 23-24 modified budget or the proposed budget of 24-25, it's always going to be higher, and you might see a larger jump. It's not that we're increasing the budget, there's a natural difference between the budget versus actual. Yes?
Can you talk more about the modified column? Is that going to be actuals through a certain number of months and then remaining number of months of budget, or did you reforecast future months after actuals?
So actually, modified budget refers to the adopted budget with additional changes that we have made throughout the year. So we make a supplemental budget adjustments, and we do it 3 times a year. So this one includes changes that we made through March.
Okay.
So it includes additional adjustments on top of the adopted budget.
Are there actuals in any of that amount?
No, not for the 23-24 budget.
Okay.
It's really hard to see this in either there or here. So in the document, I think you're actually referring us to page 37.
That table was not meant to provide any financial overview. It's to provide the components of the financial summaries.
So Mr. Munn will open to a page, so everyone can open to that page to walk through it.
Yeah.
So if you turn your books to 37.
Yeah, so I was just saying that that table that you see up there was an example of the financial summaries. So far left column will give you a line item description of what those rows are. And then first 2 columns after that would be actuals, and followed by modified 23-24 budget and 24-25 proposed budget. And the changes columns are against the modified 23-24 budget versus 24-25 budget.
Sorry to interrupt. So I think, Jeff, your question was, so last year we adopted a 23-24, but then during the course of the year, we did a supplemental budget, at least one. And so that's the current budget that we're operating under, and it's called the modified 23-24.
Right.
That is correct.
So
I'm good with that.
okay.
Steve, one other follow-up question that you mentioned. The actuals might be lower than the original proposed budget or equal to? I couldn't.
So when the budget actualizes, the actual financial spending will always be less than the budget because of the budget is a ceiling amount.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just referring that when you're comparing 23-24 budget versus 22-23 actuals, you might see a larger jump because of that gap.
Right, but can you see the actuals versus budget for that year? Like the FY22 budget, can you see that comparison to the FY20 actuals versus the FY22 budget?
Not in the budget document. So the way it's laid out is how it is laid out. However, that's if there's an area that you would like to see, you can.
No, the question behind the question for me is, you're going to have prior year's budgets where we've underspent, from what you're telling me. And so if that's true, I'm just curious, what is the amount we've underspent by? Is it 2%? Is it 3%? Because that will inform how much we should look at for this year that we might underspend?
So depending on the year, it ranges anywhere from 4 to 6% as a budget spending savings.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Greg, I have another question. I thought from our prior meetings that it wasn't just the columns that are different, but rather if you pick any page, and I'm just trying to pick one at random, that it's also this resources requirements format.
Yes, we can go back to 37 again, and I can walk you through that if that's helpful.
And the reason that I wanted to mention this is because if anybody goes back to, say, the adopted budget for 23-24, or even 22-23, you're not going to have a page that looks that same way. It's a new format this year. And I just want to make sure everybody realizes it's a new format. We're all going to be adjusting to it.
And Mr. Munn, if you could speak to a little bit about the why, the new format too, and what we've heard from the board and budget committee in the past.
Yeah, so the previous format that we used was not an intuitive flow like you would normally see financial information presented. So this is a format both in terms of the presenting the actual data, the historical data, and the budget data, but also from top to bottom, with revenues being on top. In local government, we call them resources. So these are all the resource. If you're looking at page 37 as an example, these are the resources that would come in during the year, new resources. This would be your top portion of your P&L statement if you are referring to a private sector, revenues coming in. The next section below that are requirements. Those are the expenditures. Those are the dollars that we expect to spend, and which Steve was just talking about. Then there's a line below that that says contingency. And contingency will be, you'll be able to read about that in the policy that I send you that was brought up earlier. But those are dollars that the board, that the budget committee and the budget committee approves and the board adopts, that are set aside in appropriations not for anything specific, but it's items, it's an amount that's there as a contingency. I was trying to think of a better word than contingency, that the board can spend, can reallocate in different areas as they choose to. So it's a contingency. So those make up the total requirements. So that's your traditional profit and loss statement, if you might think about it that way in terms of budget. For the accountants in the room, there's a little bit of a balance sheet element here, which is the very bottom, and that is the beginning fund balance. That's our beginning projected checking account balance. If you think about your savings or checking account, those are the dollars that we're projecting to begin the year with. So if you begin the year with a projected beginning fund balance, you add the revenue or the resources above, you take away the requirements below, you end up at a balanced budget. If we don't spend any contingency, then what happens is that contingency amount becomes the ending fund balance and the beginning of next year, and it just flows that way.
So one of the key changes within the budget document last year was the establishment of internal service funds, which is a best practice. So that it was taking out of the general fund, for example, functions like finance, HR, and establishing their own funds so that there can be true cost of service aligned to departments. This year, Greg, can you speak to the general fund changes and what was taken out of the general fund and why, and how that'll change the reading of the document?
So, this year, during this process, we've moved public health, a couple of departments out, but public health is the largest of those. And that's largely because the public health budget is about 75% funded by grants. And grants, again, are a special revenue fund. They're dedicated for a specific purpose. And it's for counties our size, it's probably very common to have those in their own special revenue fund. So that keeps that activity in one fund, and then it also helps with the transparency of the general fund. And one of the big reasons for that is as we move forward and establish a long-term financial plan for the general fund, it'll be very clear and easy to read and understand, even to the point where Ms. Ledesma was talking about the KPIs, the key performance indicators or outcomes, that we'll be able to connect activity and resources together to be able to report out on a report card. You know, here's what it costs the county to provide this function and other outcome measures such as that.
I'm so sorry, just so I do proper homework, that if modified 23-24, if we were sitting in June of 24, it really would be actuals if you could close the books out July 1st.
That's right.
Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yep. And I'll step way back, and I don't want to go too long, but I'll just say that all of this effort is tied to, you've heard us talk about GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association. They really set the standard and help people that do work like Steve and I do as targets to move towards. So this budget document, we're moving it towards what's called a Distinguished Budget Award, and if you follow their criteria, their benchmarks in terms of producing a budget document, you get an award for it. So we're moving in that direction, really just to provide a best practice budget document for the community. No, we get a medallion. We get a medallion, yeah.
No line item, there's no column that says actual year to date. So we really don't know how we're doing relative to that modified budget, which would have been another interesting column to look at. It's like, okay, that was the budget. Where are we right now? No, then what are we proposing?
So that's a let me segue a little bit into financial reporting. One of the other areas that we're moving in terms of transparency and whatnot is having regular financial reports for the board. And we're not there because we have a system that doesn't accommodate that well. And as we move into the new ERP, the expectation is that we'd be able to provide those regularly. So you'd have the budget, which again is year to year. It doesn't have the information you're talking about, but we'd have periodic financial reports that look like this, but are monthly or quarterly that you could track as you go forward.
I would just like to observe that there was something that confused me a little bit in the table of contents, and it's just a pagination problem. I was observing specifically that two sections, so if I look at the table of contents, it's numbered for land use and transportation has a budget equity page. And then on service districts on page 7, it also has a budget equity page in the table of contents. But the actual sections, for example, public safety and justice, health and human services, they have a budget equity page too. It's just not listed in the table of contents. So for example, I'm on page 5 of the table of contents. Housing, Health, and Human Services is not at page 229. It's pretty close but no cigar, is that old expression?
So Chair, if I can just answer that. There were several observations. We just got the printed copy today. We're going to be comparing this to the online version. In addition to that, my budget message, which I shared this evening, is actually not in the document either. And so what we are going to do is go to work tomorrow and follow up with your budget committee and at a minimum get the online version updated, but also work getting you a printed version, reprinted version too.
Oh, okay.
So I think there may be a couple other things within this budget document as well. We just noticed double headers. I would say that's a minor issue, but we will be working on these corrections and getting back to your budget committee tomorrow.
Yeah, I was also going to mention that this is a working document. As we're working on the budget document late into Friday, we discovered a few items, including the double headers and some of the supplemental tables that were referencing last year, 23-24 tables. So all of those will be addressed. It's just that currently we have some of those formatting issues, as well as as you mentioned, Chair Harrington, there are some items that's not on the table of contents that are actually on the document. So we'll work on those and continuing modifying the budget document.
So, Mr. King, I just want to be clear. Tomorrow, the Budget Committee will be receiving an update of when the online version will be updated with all the corrections, as well as a new printed document.
Okay. And will it be available from us at your office and come pick it up, or what's the?
Let us follow up. Let us do some problem solving tomorrow, and then get back to you.
But my chief concern was just making sure that I left this meeting knowing sort of what the structural type changes are as I go through this next 2 weeks of study. So clearly I understand there's that budget equity summary piece per, I don't have the lingo down yet, functional area. And also, I'll see this nice, intuitive for me, non-CPA person, format of resources, requirements. So
I want to highlight the other two structural elements in the general fund. Public health, as Mr. Mund had mentioned. In addition, parks.
Okay.
I'd just like to say that, just glancing at it, because I just picked this up tonight, this is a much improvement, readable document than last year. So congratulations on that. It's a good job.
Thank you.
So one of the things I noticed, looking at page 37, that jumps out at me, and maybe this is going to be a topic for one of our later meetings, but the miscellaneous line under resources is showing a massive increase. Yeah, and that just looks interesting to me. I guess we will dive into that later, perhaps. You see that?
Yeah. Oh, that is that's the bond. That is an increase. It's $150 million of that is a bond proceeds to fund the transportation. So it sticks out because it's a one-time infusion. Mm-hmm.
Remember you said earlier, misstep, we couldn't stick to a cash flow pay-as-you-go model, so the board made the decision to bond revenues for like a 20-year time period.
Okay. And so
Curious as a Melissa
when one digs into the
miscellaneous as a title.
details here of that,
It
will be
all
shown.
that, all that flows up
show
to
up.
this page
Got it.
37.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the
I thought that we were going to capitalize on Aaron Doyle's cooking abilities, and that was from the baked food sale was
That's one heck of a big sale.
New revenue, miscellaneous.
New resource.
That's right. Better get busy. We're getting a second oven.
Any other questions on the budget document?
Oh, my gosh.
That is.
I just want to highlight, I appreciate committee member William Bolin highlighting the improvements that have been made in this budget document. Staff have really taken the feedback both from your budget committees and also staff and other community members, continuing our journey of making this really transparent document. And that takes time, and it is also challenging with the legacy you heard me talk about before, the enterprise resource management system. So we are looking forward to more contemporary financial management tools in the future to continue to enhance the transparency and understanding of this document, because it's an important document.
And along that line, I'd like to say that I have a lot more comfort knowing that GFO GOFA.
GFOA.
GFO, I get those all. Anyway, we're following their standards. And that's important to me, because I value that. I have a lot more faith in what we're doing, and I'm really pleased. So thank you for that as well.
Yep. Okay. So I'm going to move on to the next slide, and this is just a summary schedule of the second Budget Committee meeting, which is May 15th through the 17th. A couple things to point out is that Wednesday the 15th and Thursday the 16th are Washington County budget reviews, not all districts, but then on Friday, all districts will meet. And this is a summary. The detail presentations they'll be sent out again as we refine these, but they're in your handouts. It looks something like this. It's a 2-page document. So there'll be presentations in the morning and the afternoon, Washington County on the 15th, morning and the afternoon, Thursday the 16th, and then in the morning on Friday the 17th is when ESPD, URMD presentations will occur, and presentation, deliberation, and budget approval. And North Bethany will follow that. And then in the afternoon, we will move into SDL number 1 and then finish that and the rest of the Washington County deliberations. The goal is to be able to wrap up by those 3 days, but we do have 2 extra days set aside. I've mentioned that before, beyond this if we need to move into those time slots. Any questions on the upcoming schedule? All here. All right, budget, here's just a preview of what's coming up for those meetings. Again, it's 3 days, March 15th through the 17th, 9 to 4 o'clock. The special district budget committees will meet only on Friday. Don't have to meet Wednesday and Thursday. There'll be working lunches provided on Monday or on Wednesday and Thursday for those days because of the tightness of the schedule.
That's not quite right. The Washington County Budget Committee meeting also, Budget Committee also has to convene the afternoon of Friday, according to this schedule.
That's right.
But the other ones don't need to be there Wednesday or Thursday.
Oh, it says 3 days. Duh.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for catching my error. Okay, I'm with you now.
Okay. So there'll be department presentations made by the ACAs that will get into some of the detail that's in your budget document here. It'll be a time to ask questions. We'll also have an opportunity to take public comment and for the budget committee members to consider all of that in their deliberations. And as the budget committee, you have the ability to revise the budget. It takes a vote. Everybody has the same vote, so if there's 10 members on a budget committee, everybody has a equal vote in terms of approving the budget. And I think I've mentioned the rest of it. Additional meeting dates are May 22nd and May 29th if needed.
Can I ask a question about that, the if needed part? So we'll certainly know more on that Friday. But I'm wondering, for at least the county, if we want to checkpoint as a budget committee before the close of business on the 16th to see if there may be any proposed amendments. Because if there are, then maybe we do have to think about May 22nd. But if there aren't, then it simplifies things.
That's a great point, and I should have brought that up, is at the end of each day, we'll have a check-in to see how we're doing, and then reset ourselves for continuing the meeting for the next day, which would be what you were referring to on the Thursday afternoon.
But since we've never done this quite like this, yeah, I'm not sure if I'll be able to answer that question at the end of the day, Wednesday. But it does.
Thursday.
No, you said we'll checkpoint it every day, if I heard you right. Did I hear you right the first time?
Yep.
Okay, So I'm just saying, I may not know the end of the day Wednesday, but I better make sure to say something before the end of the day Thursday, because if I
Right.
don't, it makes it a lot harder on everybody else. Yes, yes. So that really,
Yep.
I'm trying to put the burden on those of us, right, I have a, what is it, I have a track record, a previous track record of amendments. I don't know if I'm going to or not, but I'm gonna make sure I say clearly one way or the other by the end of the day on Thursday. Because I don't want to impact the rest of the budget committee members unnecessarily by holding out on Friday to say, oh no, we really need you to come back in the 22nd. That's all. It just seems only fair for your time. Just putting it out there.
Which does raise the point of the budget committee proposed budget amendment request. When will that be? If there is a conversation on Thursday that says, you know, there are some members of the committee that do want to make an amendment. When is this due and how does that work?
So normally that comes up organically through the process of the budget committee meeting. It could happen at the very beginning when you're hearing presentations the very first day. It could come up towards the end. The form is, you have a copy of the amendment form. It's also linked into the agenda. So it's in a couple of places. You can get it electronically as well. And the budget committee, there's different ways the budget committee can approve an amendment. It can be, if it's something simple, it could be, we're approving the budget as proposed with the amendment. It can be done like that. Or if it's more complex, then it would take staff some time to go back and calculate the cost of that.
So one point that I would like to highlight on the amendment form, just as it's the responsibility of the budget officer to forward a balanced proposed budget, it's the responsibility of the budget committee to forward a balanced budget to the Board of Commissioners. And so the two tables on the bottom, one is for revenues and expenditures. So if you are requesting an additional expenditure within the budget, you need to also demonstrate what the offsetting revenue for that expenditure would be.
Good questions. Any other questions? Or
Not for me.
guess we're to final comments then? Or do we do that?
Right now, Budget Committee Chair, if there's any final comments.
I didn't prepare any.
Do you need a motion to adjourn?
Please.
No, you don't need a motion to adjourn, according to Kevin. He was shaking his head behind you.
No, it's past 8. It's time to-
So I just say let's adjourn then? Okay, let's adjourn.
Hey, got it.
Right.